right?
Yes.
The Church of Peter and Paul in Rome is the Church of Pee-Pee. That tells you everything you want to know. Now let us, without going into the details behind all that, and there are a lot of them, let us go directly. Let's go directly to the origin of Islam. Augustine was the big guy, and the Bishop of Rome always depended on him for what to do. Augustine was down in Africa, and they called him back to Rome regularly. And on one event, why the bishop, he wasn't pope yet, said, "How you doing down in Africa?" And Augustine replied, "Very well, we're converting thousands of people every day." He said, "But the Arabs won't come in." And the bishop says, "What do you mean? Why not?" Now listen to this one. These are exact words. And they come from the Jesuit Vicar General after 9/11, giving a talk to all the Jesuit provincials of the world. And listen to these words that Augustine said. "They won't come in because they lived in Palestine at the time and know the story we tell about Jesus is not true." And the bishop said, "Well, what should we do about it?" And Augustine said, "Find an Arab Jesus." It took them 150 years and they found Muhammad.
Why would they have but it's like the formation and the tenets of Islam and the way that their missionary service has been one that has been spread by the sword.
Christianity is the first sword bearer.
Well, yes.
The Jews are the first sword bearer. The Jews conquered Canaan and killed people right and left. And the Christians have killed more people than anybody.
Yes.
They've slaughtered millions of people for not agreeing with them.
True.
Islam has done a pretty good job to follow up, but they're not nearly as guilty as the Christians.
Wow. Well, so in a sense, then they mirror each other in the pernicious way that they subjugated people.
Yeah, they do. The true Jesus and his church were exterminated by the Church of Rome.
Yes.
So there's really no essential difference in all three religions. All three reject the true Son of God of the New Testament, and all three have their work salvation, and all three are involved, especially Romanism, because she's the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, pursuant to Revelation 17 and 18. It is a bloody, murderous, empire-building religion that believes it has the right to rule every nation on earth, and that every human creature is to be subject to the Pope, and if they refuse to be subject to the Pope, they can be put to death pursuant to the writings of Thomas Aquinas.
By devotion to the Constitution and support of it. Abraham Lincoln, the president, was killed by the Jesuits of Rome, but there was no Jesuit there involved directly. It happened with President Kennedy, the same thing. You have two different streams. In Abraham Lincoln, you have that there was a man professing to be a Christian, solid Christian, and then there you have a man that professed to be a solid Catholic, but then put to shame his own institution when he was confronted about what he would do as a Roman Catholic president about the Constitution and about the interests of the Roman Catholic institution. When he placed the Constitution of the United States above the canon laws of the institution, he called for disaster.
Every abominable thing that is happening today is coming from Rome, the Roman Catholic cult. And they make all kinds of pretenses, that they're innocent and all this, but they're the ones that murdered for years Christians and Jews, true Christians. The Catholic cult are not Christians. Now, I'm not saying that there's not Christians in there, because a lot of our congregation, probably more than 2/3, are former Catholics. And there's a lot of people in the Catholic Church that want to serve the Lord. It's a hierarchy that anti-Semitic Martin Luther King, but Luther said the Vatican, who traveled from Germany to out in Rome, He said that the Vatican is a sewer of corruption. And there are millions of books written from nuns and former priests that got out of that organization, that political, satanic organization. And so you can read their testimonies by the millions if you wanted to. But that's the Antichrist. The Antichrist is not just one person. It's one person that, just like Christ is one person, and all that are going to heaven are in that one person of Christ, and all that are going to hell and the lake of fire are all those that are in the other person, which is the Antichrist. So John stated that even at his time when he was alive, that there were many Antichrists in the world.
And what would the world look like if the Vatican and the Church actually followed the tenets of Christ?
Well, what we would have is we'd have national sovereignties. We would have nations that are denoted by race, language, culture, and they would have their own geographical boundaries, and they would not be interfered with. There would be no empire building. So peoples could have their right to their specific lands, and especially the nation of Israel. That the Jews could have a right to their land, that the Arabs could be removed to Jordan or any other Arab country where they could be Muslim, and the Jews would not be bothered. And I also mean that they could also be governed by their own patriotic Jewish people and not the post-Masonic Jewish labor Zionists that are particularly running the country now and destroying those people and constantly having this agitation, just like the Pope's Arab Muslims are running the PLO and Hamas and all these others. You cannot have international interference in the destinies of sovereign nations. That would be probably one of the first things. The second thing would be you'd have people could be prospering in their own nations and bringing forth their own inventions and then marketing them and making a profit without anybody being killed or any inventions being rat-holed, so that we could have true progress. Right. A lot of that was happening in the 1800s. So the 20th century has been really a reversion back to the Dark Ages. It's been a suppression of technology. And of course, you know, all the fossil fuels. There's no need for us to be on fossil fuel. We have electromagnetic motors and a few other different kinds of engines that we don't need to pollute the environment with. But any inventors that come out with this are killed.
Yes.
So, you know, when this is all done by the Black Pope's International Intelligence Community, which, by the way, James Woolsey even used that name, that the CIA, the KGB, the Mossad, the ISI, the British SIS, German BND, they all work together at the top, run by the Pope's Knights of Malta, and they are determining the destinies of nations. It's gotten to the point now where no nation, no group of people can have a leader that speaks and acts for the benefit of that people. They are all traitors.
You know, it's very interesting to hear somebody such as Cardinal Mahoney out here in Los Angeles, and when there was talk amongst folks that we need to do something about our borders, do something about locking up the sovereignty of the United States and having some discretion as to who enters our country, that Roger Mahoney spoke out against the president, spoke out against federal law, and said that no, come, you know, you have shelter in my house. Who is the Cardinal Mahoney to speak out against the sovereign laws of the state?
That's right. That's a classic example there. McCarrick does the very same thing in Washington, D.C. All the Roman hierarchy of this country is completely given over to Latinizing and Roman Catholicizing our southern borders, and for the most part our nation if they can, because all the Mexicans coming in illegally are Roman Catholics. And they will be standing by the papacy, and this will increase the temporal power of the Vatican and its control of the political parties. Because what they want to do is Latinizing our southern border, bringing all these Mexican Roman Catholics, the Puerto Rican Roman Catholics, so that they can further Catholicize our country. And even Richard W. Thompson, who was a past Secretary of the Navy, he wrote some very good books. One was called The Footprints of the Jesuits, another is The Papacy and the Civil Power. And he wrote in 1876 that the Vatican wanted to Latinize our southern borders, and now they're doing it. And it's most intriguing that this president that is supposedly a fundamentalist Christian, which is a bold-faced lie, is allowing this to happen because George W. Bush is a complete and total slave of the Pope and of Edward Cardinal Egan, who brought down the World Trade Center on 9/11.